Hello, everybody. I'm Deadforge, and thank you for joining us for the 4th episode of the Quad Damage Podcast. And as usual, we are joined by HighFunctioningMedium and Robert from S35 Gaming, as well as today our guest, Patrick, who is the creative lead on BeyondSunset, a cyberpunk boomer shooter RPG. Let's get booming.
Yes.
Quad damage.
Boom, boom.
Let the slideshow begin.
Hey, gang.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. Deadforge, I interrupted you. That what you said?
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna say I was gonna start it off just something simple like, what are some of your inspirations towards the visual and gameplay direction of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the visual direction should be pretty obvious just looking at it. One of the main design goals for the game was to have the game sort of look something more synthwavy, retro-futuristic. In contrast to a lot of other cyberpunk video games, I wanted this to be very vibrant and lean more into the synthwave style type stuff. I think in some of our earlier creative, we described it as being a synthpunk game and not a cyberpunk game.
That works. Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that kind of aura about it. I played the demo a little bit. I don't have the full game. I know that obviously both of them have the full game, but what little I played, I will say that it kind of took me a second to kind of get into the groove of things, but it started to grow on me, and I think it's pretty fun. It's a little different. Like, it kind of threw me off some of the more RPG-like stuff, or like I'd go into a room and I actually would have to go interact with a terminal or something to open up a door, but I wasn't like thinking that I needed to do something like that off the bat.
Yeah, it is very straightforward when you do.
Yeah.
I was very. When I'm playing it, it reminds me very much of William Gibson, kind of his interpretation, because a lot of cyberpunk will lean more towards things like the aesthetic of Blade Runner. You know, lots of steam, lots of neon, that sort of thing. But it was refreshing to play, but not obviously, taking a dump on any of the cyberpunk games out there. But I'm a big fan of GZDoom, so to see a cyberpunk game in GZDoom is a novelty. You know, at the time, everyone was talking about bleeding Cyberpunk 2077, and I'll be real with you, I couldn't care less about that game. As much as people loved it, I was like, that's not really me, because I'm into the boom shoot scene. So something like this really jumped out at me instead. But were there any specific novels or something that were an inspiration to you as making it?
Yeah, Snow Crash was, I think, probably the single biggest source of inspiration, both in terms of the story and the visual design. We have a few nods to that novel in here in a couple of places. So
I really like Snow Crash. That's cool to hear.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. I mean, I think when I was younger, I've read a lot of science fiction, and so Bruce Sterling, William Gibson, and of course Neil Stephenson with Snow Crash. A lot of that was informed by sort of stuff from that time. One of the things I was really keen to do for this is something that I've seen done in quite a few other games, so it's certainly not unique to us, but is that sort of retrofuturism. There's a lot of that in this game. That was also sort of really important to us. One of the things that we took a lot of care to do. I mean, even here in the nightclub, you can see that there's the characters are, all have like 80s hairstyles and stuff. So we kind of
I was going to say, it's like you know how Blood Dragon was like the 80s version of the future. What they thought. It has that sort of vibe.
Can I just say that like Blood Dragon is probably like one of the most underrated Far Cry games, right next to Primal, and also not only that, just an underrated FPS. Like, it's so short and sweet, but it's like a perfect 80s action movie video game, like in every imaginable way.
You can definitely do it. Yeah,
but the visuals are kind of similar. It's got that like vibrant, bright, more like synth wavy vibe to it as well.
Yeah.
The my channel's name on.
So again,
it's actually the game I based my channel's look on.
Oh, really?
Really?
I know, that's cool.
Okay, cool. I sent the cover art to that to my artist, and he was like, I guess I'll give you this.
What's it? The werewolf?
Well, the werewolf obviously is not
And
from there, but
the
that was
whole
like
background.
Yeah, that's it. But I was
in the
thinking
back.
about the colors and that sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, definitely the color scheme.
Nice.
A little bit of his eyes, the cult, Rex Power cult's little glowing eyes, and the werewolf's eyes too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, it's kind of crazy how just to go back off topic for a second to Snow Crash, but it's kind of crazy how that how that book kind of like predated some of the metaverse stuff and like all these different things that are like coming true now. And I think that's kind of interesting that they did that.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a story about that. No, so obviously Snow Crash was hugely influential at the time that it came out. You can draw some pretty direct lines between stuff that's mentioned in Snow Crash and stuff that sort of commonplace these days.
Yeah.
For instance, in that book, they have a description of a computer program where you can click on a 3D model of the Earth and you can go like see like street view type stuff there. I mean, the program in the book was literally called Earth. So,
Yeah.
well, some people would, well, in places where I've heard this discussed, some people will be like, wow, he kind of predicted it. But I think it's more just a matter of this was something that was probably always going to get invented. And
Yeah.
I think it had much less of a chicken and egg type thing. I think it's engineers at Google probably had this on their mind when they came up with their now iconic Earth software. So there's a lot of cases like that. The very, very funny thing, or the story that I kind of have about my game's relationship with Snow Crash and the name of some of the elements in the game, the sort of omnipresent mega corporation that shows up throughout the game, BeyondSunset, is a company called Metacorp. As you may recognize, that name
It's now taken. Yeah, but
yeah,
almost. Yeah.
yeah, it's now got used. And so originally when I conceived of this game back in 2015, at the time I had imagined it being more of a, well, it was supposed to be like a tabletop role-playing game. It was supposed to be like a book, basically. And well, the concept evolved over time. One of the earliest like sort of fictional corporations in the book that I wrote for all of this was Metacorp. And I got that name because I thought, oh, well, it's a fun nod to Snow Crash, because Snow Crash was the book that Snow Crash was where the term metaverse comes from. So I was like, oh, that'll be a fun nod to that. And of course, in the universe of the game, Metacorp is supposed to be this kind of omnipresent social media platform. So imagine my surprise in 2021 when I look on, I think it was an Ars Technica article or a Wired article I was reading. It was like, oh, Facebook is rebranding to Meta, and it's like, wait, you guys can't do that. That's my name. I have that.
Yeah.
And
it should have copyrighted it. You could have been
question there though.
Right now.
Quick question. Does that, like, is there any legal issues in that regard? Like, I mean, is there any problem there since they rebranded and it was in your game, but it's not technically the same thing? You know.
The issue, well, so I have actually
I don't know
faced.
Can you copyright meta though? You copyright that word?
Well, you're conflating copyright with trademark.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, true.
Yeah, the short version of what happened here is not long after that. So I owned the domain metacorp.com, metacorp.games, metacorp.gg. I had a bunch of these domains that I owned for my company because I'd actually used Metacorp as my DBA, my doing business as name. Was the name of my company for a while. And so not too long after the Facebook Meta shift, I got a very, very scary sounding email. They're like, this is a pending trademark, and if you don't hand this over immediately, you could be open to liabilities. And at the time, I was kind of dumb and just didn't want, well, I'm still kind of dumb, but I'm not as dumb on this subject as I used to be. And I thought, oh, no, I don't want anything to do with this. Fine, I'm just not going to renew the domain. You guys can have it. Not an issue. I would find out later that after scrutinizing the email more closely, I realized that this is one of those kind of griftier companies where they'll basically like send you a scary email like that to scare you into giving them their domain so that then they could sell it to Facebook. So I got grifted on this one hard. I got taken for a ride, but I mean, it's whatever. I've adopted a new company name, so it's pretty immaterial. And as far as I can tell, nobody at Facebook cares that I have used the name Metacorp in game because obviously not the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt that would be something they'd care about, but yeah.
I also just want to point out the irony that the company that inspired my fictional evil mega corporation went and adopted the name of my fictional evil mega corporation. So
Look at that. Look, Snow Crash isn't the only thing to see the future.
Yeah. There are so many of them. Whenever a fictional evil company is used in media, they'll either have the word corp or something. Tech is another one
Always.
as well. And,
Also,
yeah, I always think Ultratech from Killer Instinct. I don't know why that's the one that always comes to mind. But I think Evil Company, I think Ultratech from that game.
I don't know if you heard that.
But yeah. Be a scary day if it ever happens and they announce some sort of tournament. Did you the environments in here? Did you take them from real life locations?
Yeah, there's I think 2, maybe 3 real life environments, or places that are in the real world that are in the game. The first one you'll probably have encountered at this point was the West Sunset Mall. That's actually a recreation. Well, I say recreation, largely inspired by the Bradbury Building in Los Angeles. It's pretty iconic.
That's in Blade Runner as well.
Yes, that is. It's, I think, probably most well known to have been used as a set in Blade Runner. It's in a ton of movies. It's not just Blade Runner, but it's a very popular place for sci-fi films to shoot. Just it's got kind of a look. It's pretty distinct. It's got a lot of really beautiful, like cast iron sort of ironworks kind of stuff. Like all the railings is all very custom and stuff like that.
Very Art Deco, I think.
Yes, very Art Deco.
Man, I love it's such a good one to use. Like that, the Art Deco design is always such a fascinating one in video games, whether it be BioShock, Prey, or even used in this game. Like it's a pretty cool thing to take inspiration from.
I was thinking a while ago of making with S35 Gaming, kind of the parent company, S35 Network, making it an Art Deco sort of thing, because every once in a while I'll catch myself watching like videos on that period on YouTube or something, and compared to like Brutalist or something, I there's a beauty about Art Deco.
Yeah, Art Deco definitely has more of an artistic feel to it than that of like the Brutalist architecture, which just looks like our sad, depressing future.
There were so many. I worked for 1 week as an Amazon delivery driver. Like
I've heard so many good things about that.
Yeah, and I got locked in the back of my van as well. So, oh my god, on a summer's day wearing jeans,
Jesus.
It was. I honestly thought that I was going to die because it was black inside. So I literally had to feel the door to feel. It's a good job I remember. But anyway, one of the buildings we went into when I first started training was an Art Deco building, and it's the only Art Deco building I've ever seen in reality. And it smelled really bad because it was old, but just the artwork on it, Art Deco really stands out to me as being a money design. It's wealth orientated.
Oh yeah,
and when it gets run down. But when it gets run down, it has a real grimy sort of futuristic feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in games like, I mean, a lot of BioShock, obviously it was a lot of rich people that went there to create Rapture. Yeah. But I think a good one to show that what you're talking about is in Prey, where, there's an Art Deco vibe to most things going on, but when you get to more of the like luxury areas and you get to the Arboretum where, your brother lives in the game, and it's like very Art Deco. There's these statues, and it's just like right there in your face, like, hey, we're the important rich people. Everybody else is more lowly, and they got the more, basic looking stuff. It's really interesting. I was going to ask, does Beyond Sunset take place before or after the events of Sunset Overdrive?
I'm only just aware that game exists, and that's about it.
Okay, well, that's interesting because the reason I asked that question is because the name of your fictional city is Sunset City, which also happens to be the same name as Sunset Overdrive City. And when I saw the trailer for Beyond Sunset, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And I was like, it's Sunset Overdrive. That's the name of the city in that. And I was like, that's insane that they just they ended up using the same thing. Obviously, two very different games with very different vibes and everything. But the one thing that they do have in common is being called, the city being Sunset City and then being extremely vibrant. So, yeah, I wasn't sure if you'd be aware of that or not, which I thought it would be a little funny thing.
Yeah, this name mostly came from a place where obviously I'm a fan of the book Neuromancer, and it's like, well, I can't call it Night City, so what can I call my fictional city? I'll call it Dusk. My game's going to be called nope, that's not going to work. Okay, no. How about this? I'll call it Twilight City. Yeah, I'm going to call my game Twilight. No, that's not going to work. Well, that's all the words I know for night. What other times of day are available? Morning City didn't seem right, and Noon City didn't seem right, but Sunset, it's a vibe.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Hopefully you don't get any letters in the post about that. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be a Sunset Overdrive for a while.
Cool.
PlayStation owns it, and Insomniac's probably not going to be making it if it does happen, and technically Xbox owns the publishing rights to it, so that's a whole interesting debacle right there.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to happen with that.
Why? I wanted to ask, why GZDoom?
Honestly,
is this what your background is, or was this an artistic decision where you're like, I like the visual look of it, as opposed to Unreal or even working with another older engine like the Build engine or something? Why GZDoom?
It's a confluence of things. There's not a single thing that went into the decision for this, but the very shortest version I can give is I used to make. I mean, I've spent most of my life making Doom mods, so I was very familiar with it. When I sort of felt like I should change my sort of ambitions for this project over to being a video game instead of pen and paper, I went through a lot of different iterations. Like at one point, wanted to do more of a Shadowrun style top down with this, but after seeing, I think it was Dusk was out at the time, and I was like, oh, Boomer Shooter is the obvious choice for this. And I was really empowered by what was that game? Wrath, Eon of Ruin. When I got that game back in 2020, it's like, oh,
it's full release tomorrow, isn't it?
Is it tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, it is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay. I'm curious to see how that turns out.
Yeah, Wrath, Eon of Ruin was like, it's like, wow, this feels like it was made in the Quake engine. And then I looked online, it's like, oh, wow, this was made in the Quake engine. So that's honestly, it was that game that really sort of empowered me to be like, I think I can do this with a retro engine. So it's a bunch of things. I know GZDoom very intimately and very familiar with it because I've just been making Doom mods forever. There's not a lot of the sort of hurdles that you have with working building something from scratch with Unreal or with Unity. So yeah, it was just the right choice, and it was also the best way I felt at the time that I could get the sort of look I wanted for the game just right out of the box. I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time getting something like Unreal to have the kind of look I wanted.
Right.
Did you play Iron Fury?
Yes, I have since played it.
Yeah, a cyberpunk game that was made in an old engine as well. I can't imagine. I had a conversation with someone a while ago in regards to it. And I said, would you rather make a game that looks old in a new engine or a game that looks newish in an older engine? And the answer was to use a newer engine because it's such a pain in the ass using older engines.
Yes, that's the experience that I've had. In hindsight, I should not have used GZDoom. It's been limiting in a lot of ways that I wasn't expecting. Yeah, I think if I were going to do this project again, I definitely would have been better for me to use. I think probably Unity would have been my choice. So
So your next projects after this, then are you going to do it in Unity or are you sticking with GZDoom?
I don't know that I'm going to have any projects after this. This is sort of
come on, dude. Come on.
A long-running creative endeavor that I've had for a while. I'm not even thinking about anything past this.
I can understand that you're probably not because you put your heart and soul into it, but everybody loves this game. I love this game. We want to see you do something else as well to see where this path in life takes you in terms of how you want to develop it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Robert. But I was going to say, do you have any future plans of expansions or anything like that? I mean, not necessarily a whole nother game, but any kind of extension to what you already have, or any kind of updates or anything like that outside of bug fixes or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the game's in early access right now. We still have 2 planned episodes that are in the works currently that are going to be added to the game for the full release. and I don't want to commit to anything because my publisher will probably get mad at me. But what I can say is that there are some concepts that some things that we ended up dropping from our sort of game design document that we would like to maybe consider for something like an expansion. We're not exactly sure what that would look like or when that would be, but we had plans for if you've played this game, you're familiar with the fact that every level sort of has a very, very different visual style to it.
Yeah.
D1 and D2 and D3 look nothing alike, basically. One of the planned episodes that we dropped was we wanted to do a Mad Max style sort of wasteland level.
Nice.
Something
like Ashes?
Yeah, maybe. I think we were thinking more along lines of what was that movie? I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's like an iconic like 70s sci-fi
Who's
movie.
in it?
Logan's Run? Is that the one?
Logan's Run, yeah, with where he takes him and the woman go on the run, don't they? Yeah, and that's very 70s idea of what the future
Or
would look like.
Boy and His Dog. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Anyway, it's one of those movies where they shot it in the desert, so that would like look like a wasteland. But like, I always love the look. I always love the look of like 70s and 80s, like post-apocalyptic movies like Mad Max, Boy and His Dog. What's the other one I'm thinking of? Oh, Planet of the Apes had a lot of that in it too, where they blend these matte paintings with these sort of like basically California landscapes and try to make it look more sci-fi. And I always loved that look for post-apocalyptic stuff. So that's definitely something we would like to do, is kind of like essentially like a 70s retrofuturist kind of level. But that's again, that's cut content. We might do it, we might not.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, but it's a cool possibility, right? What would you say that the like run time is roughly for what you currently have in early access? Because what the game is it $10, right?
Yes,
full price.
I think currently it's $10. Yeah,
I think it was on sale or is on sale as well right now. If anyone is,
I think it's currently on sale.
Yeah, I think it's like it's on sale like $2 off or something.
Each episode, if you do all the sort of side quest content and stuff in there, runs about 2 hours long just on a first playthrough. So there's plenty there. The third episode is a little bit shorter because we decided to do just something completely wild with it and just randomly do a tower defense level. It was kind of something we planned from the beginning.
Okay, that's interesting.
But yeah, episode 3 is it's a tower defense level. We had fun putting that together. As far as I know, we're the only boomer shooter tower defense level. It's had a bit of a mixed reception. Some people love it. Some people just like think it's the thing that kills the game. We're big fans, so
it's something to change it up though. So I mean, you can't fault that.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, by the time you get to it, you're invested in the game, so it doesn't really bother you what it throws at you. So maybe it's something that will even be positively taken by the public because it's showing a bit of variety in the gameplay.
Yeah, it was just kind of a out-of-pocket idea we had about this. Like, it was just one of those. It was inspired by the game. Shoot, I'm drawing a blank now. Journey of the Gods. That's a VR game that was a launch title for the Oculus Quest.
Journey of the Gods. Isn't that the one made by
I don't remember who made it.
I think Turtle Rock made it. It's kind of like an RPG game.
The best way I would describe it is sort of like Ocarina of Time, but in VR. It's very much like it's as close to you can get it to being a Zelda game without being.
I think that's the one by Turtle Rock, the people who made Evolve and Back 4 Blood, ex Left 4 Dead people.
I miss Evolve.
It's a beautiful game, and I love it.
It is. Yep, that's the one I was thinking of.
Randomly in the middle of that game, there's a tower defense level. Like the middle level of the game's the tower defense level. It's like, oh, I want to do that too. That's awesome. So that's where that idea came from.
Huh.
You said earlier that you wrote a book in terms of when you first started designing this. Is it like a notebook, or did you actually write like a novella or something, the entire story?
Originally, this was intended to be a tabletop RPG. So I had written a pretty comprehensive document sort of describing the lore of this world, just like why it is the way that it is, why it's like retrofuturist, where like it was meant to be sort of like a system agnostic source book that you could play with like GURPS or True 20, and any of these like indie tabletop RPG settings. The idea was to create something that was super agnostic that anybody could pick up with any system. I ended up, so I have like, I want to say it's like 10, 20 pages that just sort of describe like, here's the history of this world, here's what what technology exists and what doesn't. And then I had a kind of a big treatment for like, here are the different parts of Sunset City. So it's just a exercise in sort of world building and
So
alternate
release
history.
release it along with like artwork concept and stuff.
That'd be a cool like bonus thing. It's just like a little lore book.
That's what I was thinking. This is the sort of thing people would pay extra for, right? You know, it's
guys, I found my first vent.
I've made some.
On my first vent, we're doing the thing.
Nice.
I made my some of the short stories and some of that some parts of that original source book available to my patrons on Patreon, so they seem to have liked that. But I don't know, I might release that at some point. It is just a lot of just like, and in 1976 this happened. It's very boring.
But for collectors, it's not boring. Though. It's part of.
But also, if someone is and if someone is invested in this game and its lore and its world, trust me, they'll want it. You know what I mean? Like it's anything that furthers the immersive nature of the world that they're playing in, and anything that furthers their love for it, and they can show their love with it. But that brings me to the fact that it was originally going to be a tabletop game, and those origins, is that why there are RPG mechanics mixed into this seeming, like mostly boomer shooter kind of game?
I think the bigger reason is that I wanted to have like characters in the environment that you could like talk to and just have some like, it's something that made the world feel richer. It was sort of, originally I didn't plan for that kind of thing. It was just something that kind of ended up getting added on a little bit later. Sort of in the development process. It's just like, I want to, I just want something for the people who are interested in like the story behind the game to add these kind of elements to it. It's really just meant to be sort of a different presentation for some of the, I guess, I don't know, you call them like Doom Eternal-esque type like equipment upgrades and stuff, rather than presenting it as just a series of like weird collectibles that you get that you go to like some management menu.
I like that it wasn't the vending machines or whatever it was.
Vending functionally we're doing the same thing as like as a game like Doom Eternal, where they've got all these like upgrades and stuff that you get. So it's functionally it's the same thing, but in practice, it has the trappings of being a more immersive sim RPG type game because of it. So there's not a lot of the things I think you would associate with an RPG in here in terms of like the dialogue mechanics and the characters you interact with.
Are there immersive sim like systems within the game to any degree?
Yes, in episode 2. Episode 2 is actually, I think, probably our most technically sophisticated level, where there's competing interest. I don't want to spoil anything. There's competing interests. There's 3 different NPCs in episode 2 that you can align yourself with, and depending on which ones you align yourself with, you actually get a different experience. So there's you can play through episode 2 basically 3 times and have a different experience every time. So there's a lot of content in episode 2 that you won't actually see if you only play the game once. So
that's pretty cool to be in there, and then that kind of like makes me even more interested to even eventually get the game and play through it more, because I'm a big immersive sim guy, and I think that's pretty cool. And especially since we've kind of got this resurgence of like immersive sim games, especially in the indie space, that's a pretty cool thing. I mean, we got all kinds of different games coming out. I still got to check out what is it called? Control-Alt-Delete, which I think is probably one of the bigger indie M-Sims.
Control-Alt-Ego, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. No? Is it Control? Yeah, it is Control-Alt-Ego. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
What's it about? I haven't heard it.
It's like in
Sims as well.
Yeah, it's like in space. It's a lot of people compare it to Prey, kind of, and you are an ego, like a consciousness that moves between different things, and you can take control of stuff to solve puzzles and to progress through the game. And there's a lot more to it. I haven't played it, but I've seen a lot on it. The developer Mindthunk, I think. He's a really cool guy. He's interacted all over Twitter and stuff, YouTube.
When you say Prey, I get 3 Preys come to mind.
Well,
The
yeah.
2006 one that was released, that cyberpunky futuristic Prey 2, and then the Prey 2017.
Yeah. You know, if you want to go back even further, there's actually a Prey that released on PCs back in I think it was the 80s or, like mid to late 80s. It was called Prey, and it was like a space horror sim. It was actually technically the first Prey game ever. I had to do some digging for that. Actually, the only reason, I didn't do any digging. I actually found it on an abandonware site when I was trying to find a way to play the Land of the Dead game. I found it on there looking for that game because it's abandonware. And I was like, there's another Prey game. And it's lost to time probably because it's abandonware. But I found it.
Yeah.
But the Prey that I'm specifically talking about is the immersive sim Prey, of course, which is Prey 2017.
Arcane one.
Yeah. One of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
But
it was, and then they made Redfall.
We don't talk about Redfall. You know, everyone fails sometimes. Everyone.
They were just trying to prove to us they were still human.
They were not perfect, right? So Redfall showed that they can mess up, right? They can do bad, but I have hope for the Blade game that they're making. That's going to be freaking badass. I don't even care if everybody hates it. I'm going to love it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, if they stick to their guns and make an Arcane game, then it's going to blow everyone away. If they try and do this games as a service crap or whatever.
Well,
no.
I've talked about it before. Obviously, don't want to go too deep into it, but like the reason for that being is because Prey and Dishonored 2 were both absolute failures. So, financially, as far as like people playing them, reviews were pretty average. Now they both have like these big cult followings, especially Prey, but they weren't very successful, so both Arcane Austin and Arcane Lyon had to go in directions that made more money. For Arcane Austin, what ended up in Redfall was sad just because games as a service are such a big thing, and come on, you're like a co-op game that's online only. I mean, there's just, I don't know. But what Lyon did was a much more successful approach, no matter how you feel about Deathloop. Deathloop was similar to Dishonored in the sense that it really kept everything pretty focused, pretty linear for the most part, with that immersive sim quality mixed in, but it also allowed it to be a lot more palatable for your average player, average gamer. More people played Deathloop than they played Prey. You know what I mean? More people played Deathloop than they played Dishonored. It's the second most successful game that they've ever made since Dishonored. You know, I mean, Dishonored is probably one of the biggest. It's like it put them on the map, right? And I don't know numbers, but Deathloop was by far one of the most successful in a while. So as far as what happens with Arcane Austin going in the future, I'm not sure. But as far as Lyon, I mean, they were just given basically a blank check to make a Marvel game about Blade that is an immersive sim action game from the third-person perspective because they made a successful game. So now, basically, the Dishonored 2 happened, didn't do so great. They made Deathloop one of the most successful games in a long time. Then they get creative freedom because, you know, sales are the only thing that really matters in the AAA world. But now they also got Microsoft money, so...
It's a business, though, isn't it? Not a charity. So all that really matters to being counters is the money, and they'll go wherever the money goes.
But I think being under Microsoft now is going to help them a lot, both financially and the fact that Microsoft has been allowing, minus the layoffs and such, Microsoft has been allowing people a lot more creative freedom within the studios that they bought. So
too much at this point. They seem
hopefully
wasn't doing well.
Hopefully, the immersive sim makes a big comeback. If that's the case.
I hope so.
Because they seem very few and far between. And as I said earlier, my partner loves immersive sims, so she should be very happy with it.
There's a new one coming out.
Fortnite.
There's a new one coming out this upcoming week on Thursday, February 29th, called Ad Infernum, that I may have mentioned prior.
I've heard that.
Yeah. it's probably going to be covered by a lot of people because like IGN covered it and so on. So it'll probably be covered by a lot of people by the time it comes out.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool one. I think people should keep their eyes on and should be looking at. It's definitely going to be, one of the cooler indie immersive sim horror experiences out there for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Mr. Patrick, I do have one question for you.
What was that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So with us, Mr. Patrick?
Oh, of course.
One question for you. I was noticing, or just felt like, is there any like Shadow Warrior influence anywhere? I mean, other than just the sword, like there's a lot of that feeling with everybody kind of muttering Japanese under their breath when they come at you, and the severe gore and everything. And I was like, it's the one influence I never hear anybody talking about, and it's like all I was thinking the whole first like 2 hours.
Not necessarily. Shadow Warrior was one of those games that I never play. I had the demo for it. The only times I ever like really got interested in Shadow Warrior was like when I was a teenager. I used to make Doom mods, so I used to go there to like rip sprites out of, right? But I've never actually like played Shadow Warrior all the way through. So it wasn't.
I haven't either.
One of my favorite ones. Yeah.
But a lot of the same. But I mean, like a lot of the influence that a lot of the things that influence Shadow Warrior also influence this game. So
yeah. I love the jibs in this. It's like when you cut someone, man, you cut them in half.
Yeah, I also bring it up because, like Shadow Warrior, this game is absolutely putting me under the floorboards.
I was going to make a joke of it earlier on that I see the never give up screen a lot today. But I remember I couldn't even in the demo. I couldn't even get out of the beginning when she falls down in the cryostasis, and you have to hop your way. I couldn't even get out of there.
I made it through a pretty good bit.
Yeah, I was learning keyboard and mouse at the time though, so I started playing using controllers because I was afraid how to use keyboard and mouse, and it was playing the demo and a few others that taught me how to use keyboard and mouse. And Hrot was the first game that ever beat purely with keyboard and mouse. Oh, wow. And yet you can't go back. I tried to play controller game. I think I mentioned it before last time as well. I tried to go back and play first-person shooters with a controller, and it's absolute arse.
I know we talked about that in episode 2. Melancholy asked me, because I mentioned playing Quake on Switch. Melancholy asked me about, how I felt about, first-person shooters on controller and all that stuff. And I mean, I grew up with it, right? So I play just as well on controller as I do keyboard and mouse. So, but I hear a lot of people do that. Like I have a friend who grew up also playing on controller his whole life, and now, I mean, he plays mostly on PC. And when he goes back to controller, he's like really, really bad. It just doesn't feel good for him anymore, right? And like I don't get that.
You can't say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't get that because like I've kind of always played a little bit of everything when it comes to consoles, PC. Yeah. I mean, shit, I've played shooters on my phone with just little crappy touchscreen things, and I mean, I do pretty all right on that. So I think it's just I'm pretty good with adaptability. Just depending. I mean, depending on the game, sometimes I prefer a controller. Like I was playing The Darkness 2 on PC again when I was working on my Darkness 2 video, and I chose to play that with controller because I just think it felt like crap on keyboard and mouse, because there's no way that game was designed to be played on PC. Like the way the buttons are like mapped for your grabbing and your attacking with your your shoulder demons and stuff like that, it just doesn't work right. So controller just felt better. So it's like a case-by-case basis for me, but I think on the whole, first-person shooters definitely feel better on PC and mouse, keyboard and mouse, because of the you got more area. It's a lot quicker. Reaction time's better, stuff like that. I think it feels better, and I think the like walk button, like WASD and mouse, and like not mouse, but like space. I think that's a lot easier for bunny hopping and strafing and stuff than it is on a controller by pressing A or X or whatever.
Yeah, even when I'm typing like a script or something, my fingers will hover over the WASD button. Even though I'm not playing a game, it just naturally, as my hands are on there, they'll be hovering over it.
Just in
It
case.
just becomes so used. Yeah. You never know when you're in the mood, but
Right.
when you get into your mid-40s, it's
Mr.
you don't-
Patrick, is there a story on this room up here? Is this to come, or is this just sort of like a fun thing?
Yeah, well, there's kind of a story here. There's more content. Well, first of all, there's going to be more content here.
Yeah.
Second, I'm trying to think of the way to approach this. We're doing two things going on here. One is we're going to be doing a crossover with another media property.
Does it say
Let's
True
Okay.
Eyes?
yes.
Mhm.
And I don't want to spoil this. There's an analog horror series on YouTube that we're going to be doing some crossover content with in the future,
Yeah.
and this area is going to tie into that a little bit. So that's
Okay.
as most as we'll say about that.
Cool.
Video
I
game
wasn't trying to
related.
use the beans. I was hoping I wasn't just missing something.
Yeah, there's more content coming here.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Other
So,
than secrets?
quick reference. Does everybody know who the True Eye cult is? Since it said
I haven't
True
got
Eye.
a clue.
No?
Enlighten us.
The True Eye cult is from
Oh.
Dead Rising. It's probably one of the most
Dead Rising.
interesting and intriguing things in the entirety of that game that is just barely even touched upon, and I wish they would do something with it in the future, because a whole game could be made around their existence, because it's just insane.
Yeah.
They just pop up out of nowhere, and they're like just a crazy cult during a zombie apocalypse thing, and it just, I don't know, they're weird and they're spooky and they're insane.
So
Tangent aside.
the Dead Eyes reference in this, is that an actual reference to that Dead Island thing, or is it just
What?
as a reference to something
Listen
else?
here, Robert. Dead Island and Dead Rising are not the same thing.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
No, Dead Rising. It said True Eyes on the wall, so it just reminded me of the
Yeah.
True Eye cult. I highly doubt that True Eyes and True Eye cult have anything to do with each other. I think True Eyes probably has more to do with people watching people and more cyberpunky stuff. No, that was just reminding me of that.
Well, Big Brother's watching, right, at all times. Although I haven't seen many cameras in BeyondSunset. Yes.
You never do.
There's some
Dun dun dun.
There's some deeper lore behind that.
Yeah.
I won't give too much to that, but what I will say is that it is interesting you brought up cults, since that is sort of a theme in this game. I don't know how much you've dived into any of the lore, the data discs here, but this game is definitely about a cult. That's for sure.
Okay. Okay.
That's I think that it's fairly evident when you play through it that that's kind of what's going on, especially as you get to episode 3 when you're literally on a cult compound. On that note, yeah, that since it is a big theme of this game, oh man, I ended up, I've had some involvement with high control groups in my own life, and maybe not to the extent that people who end up in cults, but it's definitely something I wanted to bring across in this story here.
Yeah.
Just completely incidentally, I ended up having somebody else in my life have basically reach out to me, somebody I knew from like high school, talking about their experience in a cult and having some difficulties moving away from it, getting away from it. And this is just something that happened recently. I had no idea what to do. I was out of my depth. I am not an expert on cults, while I'm interested in the topic. It's not something that I know anything about. I ended up reaching out to trying to do research to figure out like who I could contact, who I can get in touch with that could actually help this person. And I ended up doing research on YouTube, found a YouTuber who was a former member of that organization, and we ended up fostering something as a friendship, something of a friendship. She ends up showing up in game. There's a character who's an Easter egg in here, who's a nod to her. Interestingly, her entire online presence just evaporated just last week. I'm not sure what happened to her, but based on how this organization interacts with its former members, I think it's fair to say that she was faced some risk of legal exposure, which is why everything disappeared. And the only proof that this person ever existed currently exists in the game.
That's pretty damn crazy, man.
It is. Are you saying that you physically don't know if this person is okay, or it's just the online aspect of her that has disappeared?
She was a whistleblower who leaked documents about the organization. So she created basically a fake online persona that represents her to obscure her identity. So I'm sure she's fine. This cult isn't known for using, well, I say cult. For legal reasons, I'm not saying this organization is a cult. In my opinion, they are a cult. The organization that, in my opinion, is a cult has a long history of just suing the pants off of people to get them to be quiet, especially former members and whistleblowers.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page in regards to that. We feel what you're saying. Cool.
I'd say they probably just went dark to make it the best possible situation for themselves. I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah. So they went sometime probably like dark as in night, as in beyond sunset.
The title of the game is more a nod to Beyond Thunderdome, just because it's a cool sounding name.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I was gonna say, as long as there's no people in raincoats, I think the Capcom legal team won't have any issues with your cults. So.
You should do like a prequel episode just called Sunset, and this is like the follow-up, Beyond Sunset.
No, I've
like Beyond Heretic.
And then maybe
if we ever do a sequel, it's going to be Beyond Sunset 2, Beyond Sunset, just to annoy people.
2 Beyond 2 Sunset.
That's
then
better.
I'm going to go and confuse people and make them think that it's a sequel to Sunset Overdrive. So.
Yeah. Nice. The metaverse within Beyond Sunset, the giant floating heads and that sort of thing.
Yes.
How did you come up with the idea? I mean, obviously at some point you sat there and you thought about, how I would imagine, how does information get transmitted in a electrical manner and try to physically represent it. But was there like some sort of inspiration where you were like, I'm thinking of the opening to Tron Legacy, where he's explaining to his son what the world inside the computer is like, how you picture it as a highway. Is that how you kind of pictured creating your own metaverse? Or were you just like, let me create the most wondrous LSD acid trip sort of metaverse that I could? Because it's so different from the rest of the game. It's like literally a separate game.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was like, I knew one of the ways I wanted to set Beyond Sunset apart from other Cyberpunk games is a lot of other Cyberpunk games won't include a feature that is pretty central to any kind of a Cyberpunk story. Literally where the name comes from, Cyberpunk, is this idea of cyberspace. So I felt that if I wanted this to be like a true Cyberpunk experience, I should not just have like the characters in the world like reference some nebulous matrix or network somewhere, but actually have it be something that the player can experience. In terms of the design behind it, I was like, well, I hate hacking minigames, so I wanted to have a gameplay style that was very similar to the core gameplay experience. So basically the idea is, let's just take the core boomer shooter run and gun experience gameplay and just make it trippy. So the design for cyberspace is pretty much just I think, like you said, it's a bunch of drugs. That was mostly. We just wanted to make something that was cool and trippy and just kind of different from the rest of the game. So we also really wanted to lean very heavily into the vaporwave sort of aesthetic for that, and I think we pulled it off pretty well.
Yeah. Are you going to release I mean, I know it's on YouTube because I listen to it in the car while I'm driving, along with the Dusk soundtrack and the Cultic soundtrack. But the soundtrack to it, Carl Vincent's soundtrack,
I really like the soundtrack. I really do.
It's amazing. Was it Genetic Ambivalence or something? Amazing.
Yeah, we were going to release the soundtrack last week, actually, but we got shut down by Steam, so we had to make some changes. So hopefully, like tomorrow or Tuesday, the soundtrack will actually be available for sale. So that should be available soon. Carl did an absolutely bang-up job with the soundtrack. We were very, very happy with his work.
I watched several of his videos on his YouTube channel on there, and I love synthwave. I got a family that lives 200 miles from here, so you go there for Christmas and stuff like that. I always put on synthwave music because the tracks can be 30 minutes long, etc. And I always end up hearing that I used to call it generic ambivalence or something, but it's genetic, right? That track will always find its way into that. I'm like on the motorway like this, yeah, because it's absolutely, seriously, it's absolutely banging. I edited a BeyondSunset video back when S35 was making shorts as our primary video format, and I put that in the background. I kid you not, it was the longest edit I ever did of a 1-minute video because I'm just sitting there listening to it all the time. It's awesome. I don't know how the musical artists come up with it, but it kicks well above its weight. Well above its weight.
Oh yeah, it was like one of the number one things that hit me when it first started that gave me that, cyberpunk kind of feel was the music and it's just, you feel different, you feel like you just entered the 80s, or like the 90s, when you hear that and you're like, yeah, this is just giving me a whole nother vibe and a whole nother, like I'm living in another time, and it's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I think it's shown both visually and auditory.
For those of us that lived through the 80s, they're old enough to remember it. It's not far off. It's not far off at all. There were a lot of more independent. It wasn't really pop music. The 80s was very pop and rock orientated. Rap really came into the scene more into the early 90s, and then by the end of the millennium, you had like Eminem with the most popular. But all the synth stuff that came out at the time, even the movies, you look at Tangerine Dream and musical artists like that, they were doing movie scores as well. It was one of the biggest types of genre of music that you could get. Everybody wanted to play around with synthesizers, especially in the early 80s.
Y'all ever watch that movie, The Keep?
That's one of my favorite movies, and that's why
I know,
yeah. They did Legend as well, the US version of Legend. In the UK, we had Jerry Goldsmith's score, but I always preferred the synth version of it. And I always thought The Keep was a bit weird because it ended with that Snowman song, We're Walking in the Air or whatever it's called. And it's completely, here it's a children's Christmas song. So seeing it in an 80s horror movie was quite peculiar, but it's that movie's being remade now. They're remaking it based on the original novel, which I've also read. So, Patrick, what are your favorite games as a gamer? Putting your dev stuff aside, what is it when you got your free time? Do you actually sit down and play?
I've kind of fallen into a niche. I think over the last 10 years, I pretty much exclusively play like first-person shooters and action games. For the most part. I think some of my favorite ones in the last 10 years, I really enjoyed. Fear. Fear, I think, is one of my favorite games of all time, easily. Doom Eternal was what sort of really brought me back to my love of first-person shooters. I'd kind of fallen away from video gaming as a hobby for a few years in the 2010s, so Doom Eternal was kind of what got me back into playing more video games. A lot of influence, weirdly enough, from from some games I played as a kid. The Mega Man Battle Network, which was basically Capcom's sort of answer to Pokemon. So I never got into Pokemon. I got into the Mega Man Battle Network series, which was basically just like Capcom's knockoff Pokemon.
I heard a little bit about that, but I never played them or anything.
I wouldn't mind seeing a first-person Mega Man game. I think that's a laugh.
First-person Mega Man?
I know
that'd be interesting. I feel like that'd be kind of like Metroid, though.
Yeah. They cancelled. They were going to do an adult version of Mega Man, weren't they? It was like the dark and gritty reboot, something Hunter or something like that. It was called, and it was basically Mega Man but for grown-ups. And I thought that sounded absolutely badass, man. I would have played the crap out of that. Yeah.
What have you guys been playing? You, Robert or Medium? What have you guys been playing recently?
Still trying to finish off that Steam library I've got going on. I don't. I think I mentioned it before as well. I don't play one game until completion. I play like 5 or 6 or something games all at the same time. So it takes me a lot longer to get through them. At the moment though, I'm getting back into a serious Sam phase. So I'm playing a few of the serious Sam games. But in terms of Steam, it's a bit of everything, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I actually started playing
I can't say.
First Encounter not too long ago. I was thinking about doing a series on Serious Sam, potentially.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Fear for a second then, because was it First Encounter is in the title for that as well.
No. No, Serious Sam First Encounter. Yeah. What about you, Medium?
I'm trying to work. Yeah.
Let's see. I've been getting my Marvel on with Midnight Suns. I'm just kind of surprised I liked it. Yeah, I was like, because I like the idea of XCOM, but I'm not good at them at all. Like, I'm not in that mode to know kind of like what's good to do. I'm always just kind of like attritioning my way through those games. And Marvel's Midnight Suns is a little bit more accessible in that way. You know, there's not cover that you're taking. You know, the shots always hit. You know, it's just a matter of like how much they do and stuff. But the lore is great. It's like a brand new story, and it's one of those creative characters that you get to play as that you don't hate, because it's actually got like they're part of the lore. They're kind of built around the story, the Midnight Sun story that's being adapted from the comics. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, playing Ghost Rider and Blade is like, what more could I ask for, kind of thing.
That's the only thing that was selling it for me. So
yeah, Blade's my ride or die. He's doing it all.
I love Blade. What's something you've been playing, Beyond? Patrick?
Lately I haven't been playing a whole I haven't been playing a whole lot of video games recently. I have been playing. I'm a big fan of tabletop RPGs. So recently, I've got a long-running campaign of the game Hunter the Vigil. Been doing a lot of that lately, so that's been a lot of fun. Just having been so busy over the last 2 years, I didn't have much time for it. So now that I've had more time for it, it's been good. Looking at starting up a game of Vampire the Requiem here soon as well. So that's very much looking forward to that. I've never really branched out from Beyond Hunter, so big fan of the Chronicles of Darkness series, though. So
yeah, I'd like to get more into that universe. I have very little experience with that universe because I haven't played like Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, or any of the other Masquerade games. I played the one game that's within the World of Darkness, Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood video game, which was
that the one where you turn into the werewolf?
Yeah.
And
I did a video on it.
I
think Medium's played it some. It's one of those games that, and I think the studio, what's their name? Do you remember?
Cyanide, isn't it?
Yeah, Cyanide. They're always so. It's like their games are like you love them or hate them kind of thing, I guess. But like, it's kind of they're always too overly ambitious as like a technically indie studio with like kind of a AA-ish budget, but they always try to like take too many things and like mix them together, but they never really quite mix them well. And like in the case of that game, like it would have been so much better if they just focused on a more linear experience with a lot more just focus on the combat and stuff like that with like, and they could have even done more story that way, but instead they went for such a weird approach that I still mostly enjoyed, but it's not like an amazing game or anything. You know.
All right.
Well, it's nice when people shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
Sorry, Patrick, I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm gonna have to take off here in just a minute. But I went ahead and shared some of the original artwork that was drawn by the incredibly talented Andrew Woods for the when Sunset was going to be a tabletop game. I put some of that art in there in case that interests you guys.
Okay, cool.
Andrew did a fantastic job with some of this art, and it's a shame that none of this art actually makes it into the game anywhere, because he did a fantastic job. Some of it did serve as concept art for us, though. But I think these are some of the things that this is what the game would have looked like if it had actually ended up becoming a tabletop RPG. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to jump out, guys. I appreciate all this. Thanks for putting a spotlight on my game.
It's been fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on here. Then, should we do an outro then? That's
go ahead. You can start it off, Robert.
Yeah. Cool. So thanks everyone for watching. As we've been joined, of course, today by Patrick, the creative lead of BeyondSunset. BeyondSunset is now available on Steam, so in early access. So definitely go on there and get it. It is a brilliant game. If you like what you see in the demo, it's basically it's bigger and better. So definitely go and buy it. I'm Robert from S35 Gaming. Today I've been joined by Deadforge. Today I've also been joined by HighFunctioningMedium as usual, and we shall see you in the next episode. Take care.
And also, you can find us on Twitter or X, as well as YouTube and other places. You can find me at Lord of the RPG on X, and of course Deadforge on YouTube, and stuff like that. And where can we find you, Medium?
Find me on the YouTubes, High Functioning Medium, Twitter or X, High Funk Medium with a C. Is that okay? Because that's all they'll allow. Where else? Discord.
Yeah, and what about you, Robert?
Well, S35 Gaming, you'll find us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, our website, our merch store, our affiliate store. We're around. I think Snapchat is the only one I haven't joined yet.
Interesting.
Tumblr, DeviantArt.
And Patrick, do you want to shout out the Discord or where anyone can find you as well?
Yeah, you can join the best place to find us is going to be on Twitter, X. We're at Sunset City RPG, all separated with underscore. So Sunset underscore City underscore RPG. You can find us on Steam. Just search for BeyondSunset. If you search for BeyondSunset anywhere else, you're mostly going to get smooth jazz, which is fine. If you end up finding some smooth jazz, we're big fans.
Why not?
All right, I got to run for real, guys. I will talk to you all.
All right, great having you on. All the links will be down below, everybody, and thank you once again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Excellent.
All right.
See you all later. Okay.